When I worked with a bunch of smokers, I used to go out with them on their smoke breaks and just hang out and get
Yeah.
yelled at. And I'd be like, they're sitting out here doing nothing every 4 hours for 15 minutes to all have smoke breaks. Why can't I? God damn it.
Well, see, that's the funny thing. I had a mate who never smoked in his life. Always came down with me. Always hung out. And the thing is the others never really worked out he didn't smoke. They just thought that it was like at that time he wasn't having a cigarette, you know? And it wasn't until like a couple of years later that it was mentioned. Someone's like, "Wait, you don't smoke?" And he's like, "No, I never have." And like, you were always going for smoke breaks. He's like, "Yeah, I just got up and walked out with him." Ah, smart.
Yeah. I got told off for going on smoke breaks with smokers without smoking.
See, that's the biggest problem, you know.
Stop rewarding this addiction.
But you know, it is a healthy addition to your morning routine. An episode of the Halcyon Frequency Podcast. This is episode 20, and it is airing May 29th, Sunday, 2022. I'm your host, and I'm blind, and I'm joined by Arch. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing quite well. It's a beautiful sunny morning. No, afternoon now. I'm not used to it being afternoon when we do this podcast, but it's a nice and chill 13 degrees and sun's out. Already been out for a walk, so yeah, been good.
It's about the same weather as here, actually. And a first on this show, actually. We've had guest segments before, but we actually have our first full episode guest, and we are joined by a friend of mine, Tekkud, from the realm of Dwarf Fortress. How are you?
Howdy, y'all. I figured I had to do that as the only American person to maybe ever speak on this podcast.
No, we do have two Americans, but I don't think they've ever said howdy, y'all.
Okay, well, I'm representing the country. Here I am. Howdy, y'all. Anyway, glad to be here as a full-time guest. Not full-time, like every episode. Full episode guest.
Yeah, no, our Americans are very West Coast, so we don't get many howdies.
Well, I'm not South, but I am Colorado, which is cowboy country still, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, yeah, everybody's pretty, like Jess isn't, like, West Coast, but she acts pretty West Coast.
So, yeah, I just assumed.
Yeah.
She didn't sound Midwestern. She didn't talk about how New York is the best. So, she didn't say howdy, y'all. Yeah, and she didn't say howdy, y'all. So, you know, I figured she was West Coast.
Yeah, some of us Midwesterners, I'm not actually from Colorado. Some of us Midwesterners hide it pretty well. The old Midwest accent.
I've had people ask me if I'm from the Midwest, and it always just, like, hits me like a bus. Like, really?
I think it's because of people, they can't recognize any sort of, like, Canadian accent, so they just sort of guess the closest thing they can think of.
People can recognize a Canadian accent, but they recognize, like, the just north of Minnesota Canadian accent that just sounds like they're from Minnesota. And, like, the accents surrounding that area, like, central Canada and, like, eastern Canada has an accent. Like, when you hear the kind of jokey accents, like, "Oh, hey, what are you talking about there, buddy?" and all that kind of stuff, that's a Canadian accent. But over here on the West Coast, like, we just sound like we're from California, but, like, less drawl. We don't say like all the time, and
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
I thought that. So I always thought, first of all, I always thought that the Midwest had no accent because that was where I grew up, and then I was like, I moved to Colorado, and it was really icy out one day, and I'm driving a forklift around, and things are sliding around on the forks, and I forget exactly what someone said to me, but my response was basically, "We got an ice rink going on out there." And then I was like, oh no, that's not what normal people say to each other. And then I thought maybe West Coast doesn't have an accent. And so I was at an airport and a plane had flown in from California, and I just could not stand hearing those people talk. I was like, who are you? And how do you get by in your life sounding so... Annoying is too simplistic of a term. It was like I don't know. It was grating, like hearing them laugh and joke about things. I was like, oh, you sound like a bunch of YouTubers.
What? It's a really good take that a bunch of YouTubers comment, but like California is funny because California has like 4 accents. They have like country accent, they have like Valley Hollywood accent, and then they have downtown LA accent. And it gets denser the closer you get to downtown LA. And me being someone in Vancouver, I'm told that I sound like people from California, and I go to downtown LA for an event or something, or a trip, and everybody sounds like they're from another planet. It's very hard to explain without like being me.
And it is weird too, because some of those accents, and I think the California one really exemplified it, was they don't have this one specific characteristic that you can point to and be like, that is what Californian people sound like. It's just this kind of overall sort of difference. Everything is shifted and the whole cadence is shifted just enough, and then you actually interact with them and you're like, oh, you do sound different than me. Yeah, but you can't imitate it very easily. It's not like the Southern accent where you could just be like, biscuits and gravy or something. That was a poor example, but
we just get really bogan sounding Australians than me.
I was gonna say, like, do you guys have as much variety in your accents, like between like New Zealand and Australia, that you can just point at and be like, that's annoying sounding?
The Kiwi accent is vastly different to the Australian accent.
Because
surely you both know this.
From over here, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't tell the difference between Kiwi and South African, which might sound really weird, but
I have no reference for South African.
I do have a reference for both of these.
Yeah. South African is a little flatter. I find the Kiwi accent is almost lilting in the way it goes. It does have a sort of very musical tone to it that I quite like. It goes up and down, whereas South African or South African is just that was a very poor attempt. It's just very flat. And they're the biggest differences I find.
The Kiwi accent is different in the vowel pronunciation than Australian, right? So you have like a pin instead of a pen. There's a pin or something like that. And then also every time I hear someone with a Kiwi accent, it sounds like they're really thinking very, very hard about everything they say. And everything is super deliberate and like, I don't know. It just sounds so incredibly deliberate, their speech.
Like the difference between Dutch and German. One of them sounds like they care. The other one sounds Dutch.
The biggest thing I've noticed is Australians tend to end a lot of statements like going up a little bit at the end. Like it's a question mark. Like if you listen to what I say after a long sentence, because I'm going to be really self-conscious of it now, you'll actually hear me go up at the end. And, it is like, it's always like Australians are asking a question.
And then Canadians will ask a question and not actually mean it as a question.
Yeah. Literally just say, eh, at the end.
Everything in Canada is a question. And sorry isn't an apology.
That's it. Well, Canada's very questionable anyways.
The Midwest is like that too. When you say like, what the heck is this or something, that's not a question. You're not asking a question. You know what this is. It's BS. That's what it is. That's why you're asking, what the heck is this?
Sorry?
Look, my favorite word I've learned from Midwesterners is ope.
Oh, yeah.
Like, ope.
Ope, let me just squeeze on past you.
Oh, that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, oops, but not oops.
Oh, my bad.
I never thought of that as a word. I always thought of that as like an exclamation.
Not O-P-E. Ope.
Not to be confused with the Greek opa. Nope.
Well, maybe it should be confused with the Greek.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I never really thought of ope as a word. I guess like that would be like thinking of as a word, which some people do.
Yeah.
But it's not really a word.
I can't imagine living my life without saying ope. Like, what do you do when you like almost hit somebody turning a corner? You just like look at them and stare them down. Like, you gotta say ope.
That's what the Finns do, is look at them and stare them down.
I'm Australian. We just swear.
Speaking of cursing,
so
something was confirmed this morning during a team meeting, Arch. We are, in fact, allowed to say curse words on this podcast. We're just not allowed to say constant curse words and no R-rated film expletives. So TLDR, two members of our stream team, Kiri and Jess, both have G-rated chats. You can't curse at all. So we kind of, when we started this podcast, like just aligned with that because that was their rules. So it's like, okay, we just go with their rules. And then in the last episode, there was a spat at the beginning where I had to beep out a bunch of stuff. And Kiri just kind of came up to me and was like, that's a little silly. You don't need to do that. And then I was like, but we do it for you. And her response basically was like, yeah, you can curse. It's fine. And so we asked Jess this morning. She was like, oh, if there's nothing like actually stopping us from doing that, yeah, you guys can curse. So we're allowed to curse as long as it's not heavy.
Gotcha.
As an Australian, I'd just like to say thank fuck.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually don't curse as much as most people I know in person. But
I went most of my life pretty much never cursing, but then I started working in the trades, so it kind of seeped in a little bit.
Kitchens turned me into a cursing sailor. Like I was always dumb white C word when I walked into work. So yeah.
See, for me, being Australian, it is. I don't swear as much as people expect Australians to. But the problem is when I swear, it's natural for me. Someone will be like, "You swore," and I'll be like, "Wait, what?" And that's the thing. Like, Australians seem to have this real. People seem to think that they'll be using the C word a lot, and that's never been like that for me. I've never particularly been a fan of that word, and so. Yeah, it's kind of funny, like I'll drop the F word, I'll drop the S word, I'm trying not to go too extreme, but yeah, I can actually talk without it.
I think I probably say C word more often than you, but I blame that on my days of playing Counter-Strike because I used to play with a bunch of guys from Australia. So
yeah,
it just kind of
look, it's
rolls off.
The funniest thing. When I jump into a group call and there's other Australians, all of my boganness comes back. I will sit there and basically go absolute full bogan with them, which is basically Australian redneck. But because I spend so much time talking with non-Australians or professional people, it tends not to come out.
Well, if I ever get the opportunity to mod the text files in Dwarf Fortress, maybe I'll hire you as help to do some combat log variations, Because right now the dwarves are like, that was very satisfying, or like, oh, death, I fear not, or something. But I really need a dwarf to just be like, oh, fuck. Like, my leg.
Did you ever see community member Vinsati's page of dwarven curse words that he wrote?
No. He
took a bunch of words that are all in Dwarf Fortress and formatted them into like insults. Like cat herder was one. And a bunch of other like various lines that would like ale spiller. There was
you're a mad cat herder.
There was a helmet squisher. There was an elf looker. Tons of like words that would fit into like dwarven lexicon using words that exist in Dwarf Fortress, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Unless that means it's time for us to talk about video games.
It's always time to talk about video games.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to a real quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the games that we've been playing in the last few weeks. All right?
Well, hi there. Do you like video games? Do you like cats? Maybe even otters? Well then, do I just have the place for you. FG's Otterly Cat Emporium, streaming live only over on twitch.tv. Well, hi. Yeah, hi. I'm FG. I play a wide variety of games Monday through Fridays at 9 a.m. GMT over on twitch.tv/FG². I also have a very noisy cat named Panda, who for once is actually not being noisy. And our mascot is a cute little otter named George. So come on over, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!
And we're back with episode 20 of the Halcyon Frequency Podcast, featuring myself, Blind, Archplaysstuff, and our guest host, Tekkud. Arch, I hear that My Time at Sandrock released finally. Do you want to you want to tell us about it?
Yes. So I actually, this is a big first for me. Well, not a first for me, but it's one of the firsts. I did a sponsored stream this week of a game, and that game was, as you may know, yes, little clap, My Time at Sandrock. It's the sequel to My Time at Portia. It's a, resource gathering, crafting, sort of villagey type of game, sort of like Stardew Valley, but 3D and also very different. But that sort of mechanics, you have a farm, you harvest resources, you make friends, I think you can romance someone. I haven't gotten that far. Absolutely amazing game. It just launched in early access, but as I was talking about it on stream, because I came in with it in literally first day of early access. There probably hasn't even been any time for hot fixes. And it was so smooth, so polished. And, there's as I was saying, there's a big reason for that. It is in the same world as My Time at Portia. It is using the same, a lot of the same graphics and assets. My Time at Portia was sort of like a beachy island place, whereas Sandrock is in the desert. But the premise is, the world was destroyed through robots having an uprising, so technology is feared, and you go harvesting through old resource mines and such. In this one, it was an old shopping mall. That's where you sort of go through and get the random computer parts and stuff. So yeah, it's an absolutely fun game and really, really polished and smooth. They've clearly learned so much from My Time at Portia, and it's everything you want a sequel to be. It is the same mechanics that feel good, plus those little quality of life changes that really have you coming away going, oh wow. Because if any of you ever play any resource games where you've got a base and you build things from there, we all know the struggles of, I've got to find the items that are in my chest somewhere so I can build with them. This counts all your storage items on the base for building, right? If it's in a storage container, it counts as in your inventory when you're crafting, which is something that
it's got
everyone
a bag of
wants.
holding?
Well, no. It's basically, you've got an inventory space, right? You can put stuff at the base, but when you go to the crafting bench, it can be in those chests. It doesn't have to be in your inventory to craft with.
Okay.
Which, yeah, is one of the biggest frustrations I have, because inventory management is not one of my fortes. So being able to be like, okay, I'm just dumping everything in these chests. Don't have to worry about sorting, because I very rarely have to pull something out. If I need to craft something, I just go to the table. It all counts as in your inventory. And if you've got quests... Sorry?
I was going to say, well, where is the joy in that? All I do when I play Valheim is organize chests. I mean, that's that's the most fun part of the game. That's a problem I don't have.
Disagree with you there. No, that's the thing. For me, it's like, I could literally... I have played Valheim and such on stream, and sometimes it has been, right, the stream is done. Before next stream, I need to spend a couple of hours sorting out my inventory so chat doesn't sit there watching me go through, trying to search what's in this inventory and such. And nearly every game I play like that, I always okay, what's a storage mod? Stardew Valley has better workbenches, where if you have a workbench attached to any chests, you can craft like that. And then you've got Terraria, which has the magic storage, which is just... every storage is in one spot. And the same with RimWorld. I always put stacks up, so everything can be contained in one spot. Because inventory management is not something I enjoy.
So I have to put forward my comment on what I've seen of My Time at Sandrock. So I didn't play My Time at Portia. I don't really enjoy those types of games. And I also will not play My Time at Sandrock. However, I watched BlindiRL stream the entirety of My Time at Portia. And I was watching him play some of My Time at Sandrock this morning. And they have fixed my main problem with My Time at Portia. My Time at Portia had these character models with these dead eyes that didn't look directly at the character or the camera. They just kind of looked gazed off into the distance like they were on some sort of weird psychedelic, and then bobbed their head like they were about to eat you. And it was the most terrifying thing I think I've ever seen. It was like so far beyond the uncanny valley that it went from like the uncanny valley past that into possessed doll. It like the characters in My Time at Portia are Nightmare Factory horrifying, and I don't understand why nobody else sees it. Now they just look like Disney characters, so it's lovely.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at some footage of the game right now, and are you sure this is a post-apocalyptic story about a society that fears technology? Because it looks like next Rabbids movie.
Yeah, they look like little children's movies, but they're like actually really dark post-apocalyptic nightmares.
Yeah, okay, all right. I guess those people are all desperate colonists of a foregone, civilization.
And they are all weirdly showered, and their hair's very well kept.
Yeah,
wow.
No, it's got a certain visual aesthetic, which I think, is what you're commenting on. Might not fit the tone, but no,
it's like the Tonka
really
brand
does.
of apocalypses.
I would totally play Tonka post-apocalypse.
Well, there's always that idea that Thomas the Tank Engine was post-apocalyptic.
I mean,
Did you ever
Thomas
hear
the
about
Tank
that?
Engine caused the apocalypse, probably. Have you seen that guy? Christ, he flew down from the sky and we screamed "Fuss Road Da" at him and he didn't go away.
So are you telling me that Elon Musk made self-driving trains and they became sentient and
God,
created
if
an
Elon Musk would
uprising?
make trains, we'd be in a much better place right now.
And now Thomas the Tank Engine is one of the sole remaining sentient creatures on planet Earth after a grand apocalypse?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was. I would have to look it up. Where was it? The story goes that the island of Sodor is the steam engine's only safe zone on the scorched earth, where trains are cannibalized and sold off for scrap if they dare resist their all-powerful master, the Fat Controller. In one of the Thomas books, called Stepney on the Bluebell engine, a train called Percy says engines on the other railways aren't safe now. Their controllers are cruel. They don't like engines anymore. They put them on cold, damp sidings and then they cut them up.
Someone did world building on this.
But here's
what happens when DMs get bored.
Here's the really important question. Have you seen the... did either of you watch the Thomas the Tank Engine spin-off show where they're all tugboats?
I know it exists, but no, I haven't seen it.
Because that was what I was way into when I was 5. That was my favorite show ever. I used to draw fan art of that. My mom still has, like, pictures that I drew when I was, like, 12 of these boats. Or probably smaller than that, like 8.
We need to do this.
Oh no, what are we doing? We need to do this?
We need to get this fan art.
I'm not going digging in my mom's attic, but like if I find them, I will take a photo and post it on Twitter. How's that?
That's enough for me.
I also have Donkey Kong fan art. I drew the original Donkey Kong when I was a little kid after playing the arcade game once. Anyway, My Time at Sandrock.
Yep. That's right. That's a game. Jeez.
That's what we were talking about. Post-apocalyptic mall something.
Really beautiful game. And I had a lot of people come in going, "Oh, I'm curious to see how it is and I'm waiting to buy it." And for me, it was really good because it's one of those ones where, when sometimes like Bungie release a new game that's a sequel and it's got all the mistakes of the old game and even misses some of the learnings from the old game. Like when Destiny 2 came out and it had all the same problems that Destiny 1 had before they fixed them. This has learned a lot from My Time at Portia. It feels very similar. It looks very similar, which is great considering that, it's the same world, the same things going on. And it just learns from that. And there's so many more improvements like the crafting thing, like, bag space and inventory management and just so many little things that, honestly, I just had an absolute ball with.
Without knowing anything about it, it looks like if someone wanted to take the Raft game, Raft is what it's called, and make Stardew Valley out of that, they probably would have ended up somewhere around here.
Yeah, they kind of have that same color palette as Raft. Kind of.
It is a very vibrant, saturated color palette. My favorite bit is that there's random monsters around, and you've got like these yakmals, which are yak camel cow things, and then you've got roosters that fire rockets at you, and they've got like a bandolier of fireworks, and they wear pants. And
do they sing Alice in Chains too when they're coming after you?
Can't say I know enough Alice in Chains to
There's
check.
a song called Rooster. It would be very appropriate.
I'm just looking at the Steam page. I just want to say that I think that Steam's algorithm is broken because it's telling me similar to games you've played in the past, Project Zomboid and Doom.
Well, Doom's post-apocalyptic.
I guess so.
I mean,
Are there
it's
demons in this game that you're not telling me about? This is a farming game.
It's post-apocalyptic in the sense that 1 second after midday is noon. You know? Doom is very, very close to the post-apocalyptic. Like, the apocalypse just happened. It's still ongoing, but it's post the start by a few minutes. This one is 200 years later.
Yeah, okay. So, true. Everything's dried up.
Yeah.
So this is the world
Doomslayer's come and gone.
Yeah, this is the world that Doom Guy achieves, you know. Everybody gets really pastel and very Pixar-ish, and everything's kind of happy despite the overall hopelessness and gloom of the between the lines, you know.
We don't talk about Demos and Phobos.
Regardless, though, it is really nice to hear that people are at least like very positive on the launch of my time at Sandrock. Like, there's definitely I've seen some criticism flying around at it, but it's like the positives seem to outweigh the negatives. So that definitely seems to be a solid start. And they say that they want to be in early access for a year, and it seems to be about $25, so your regional equivalent. So check out my time at Sandrock. Thank you very much, Arch. I'm gonna babble about World Seed for a little bit here. Have either of you heard of this thing?
Nope.
I can't say I have.
Okay. Well, I went nuts. I'm playing an MMO, which is World Seed.
Oh, what? I'm
playing an MMO, yeah. But it's a very me MMO. By that, I mean it's turn-based, siphoned off into your own sections. It's permadeath, and it's not something where you actually have to see other players outside of a global chat. So it's a turn-based hex grid with... Okay, how the hell do I explain World Seed? World Seed is an MMO made by one person, which was originally called World Seed, and it was $6 on Steam. And now it claims to be free to play, which in a version that was called World Seed 2, where they changed it from squares to hexes, because it was originally just like a square grid, but they changed it to a hex grid and redid the engine and re-released it as World Seed 2. And
you know why that is, right?
What? Because hexes are better than squares?
Hexagons are bestagons?
Yes, this is true. And renamed the old game to World Seed Classic and migrated all the old people's accounts over and everything. So, but it claims to be free to play on Steam, and it's not. It's $12 to buy it. You can also rename your account for $6. Those are the 2 microtransactions in it, so it's pretty fair. It's made by one person. And there's a notice on the front page of the game when you install it and launch it for the first time that says, "This game is not free to play. Please don't leave us bad reviews saying that we're scamming you. This is free to try," which is what most of the negative reviews seem to be about. But essentially, it's a turn-based game where you start in like this little home village, and you can move out of the home village. You walk out and you walk into a forest, and you get 3 options. You can either explore the area and get some money for exploring. You can harvest the resource that's on that tile, or you can fight the creature that's on the tile. And you have those 3 choices on every single tile that you move into. Some tiles have skulls on them. If they have a skull on them and you move into that tile, you have to fight the creature before you can either take a loot drop from that creature or harvest the resource that's on that tile. And the entire game boils down to going out, getting resources or specific drops, going back to your home base, and crafting those resources to get better gear to go fight tougher monsters. If your character dies, you lose everything that's in your character's inventory and that character. And you have to purchase a new character with in-game currency. There's no way to buy in-game currency or anything. And you will be constantly accruing currency and multiple characters. So at any given time, I have about 3 characters right now. There's no XP, so you don't gain anything from just killing things. The only leveling up in the game is gear score. But as you get further out, once you get outside of the first 2 rings, because there are these rings and every X number of tiles, you pass them pretty quickly. You can move from the first ring to the 4th ring in a couple of seconds just by clicking the button to move. When you get outside into the further out rings, you'll start finding dungeons. And dungeons, you line up and you queue up, and other players can join in. You can either put an invite in the public chat, you could get a link to send somebody an invite, or you can just wait for other players to join. And then when they join, you go through a selection of fights and then fight a boss and then get reset at the beginning. It's almost an idle game because all of the fights play out just based on gear score, and it's very low maintenance, but I've been oddly obsessed with it over the past week.
Right.
It's a very simple kind of procedural thing. You just kind of go through the motions of playing it, but it has all of the elements that make an MMO an MMO, minus the parts of MMOs that I don't like, where it just takes a billion years, because it doesn't. You can get a lot done in 30 minutes if you're efficient. There's one other element to this game that I'm missing that I forgot to mention. When you use up a tile, the tile gets a check mark on it. Once an hour, the entire world resets and all of those tiles become harvestable again. So you can run around in a zone at your level and harvest everything in 10 minutes. And then an hour later, you can come back and do it again. But while you're harvesting certain tiles, there's a chance that you'll get a rare drop, which is a world seed, which is the name of the game. You can then go back to your home base and plant that world seed and generate a completely new world based on the biome that world seed is tied to. So if it's a fire seed, you plant it, you'll get all stuff for the dwarven characters. So you'll get fire resistance drops, you'll get fire-based gear, fire-based gems, which you can inscribe into your armor to get fire-based effects. And then that world is random. But when you decide to uproot that world seed and go back to the overworld, that world is destroyed and regenerates itself. And so when you plant your next fire seed, you'll get a different layout for that fire realm. So it's a weird mix of a roguelike and MMO, and it kind of feels like you're playing a MUD, but it's kind of none of those things, but all of those things, and it ticks all the right boxes in my brain. So I really like it.
It's funny because you said that you're playing an MMO, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm very surprised. And you were like, but it's a very me MMO, and I'm like, now I'm very confused. Then you explained it, and I'm like, this all makes sense. How much socializing do you do on that game?
Socializing? I mean, there's a world chat. There's people talking in there.
No. How much do you do? Do
I
you play it like an MMO, or do you play it like a solo game?
have not spoken with another player yet.
Yeah, so
Sui refuses to believe that it's an MMO. She popped into my chat and goes, "Where are the people?" And I go, "Well, there's a chat there. I'm ignoring it. It's fine."
yeah, Sui plays Final Fantasy 14, so
Yeah, she
she
also
comes from that top 1% of if there's not a crowded room, it's
Yeah.
not an MMO.
I never talk about it, but I also play Batmud.
How are you not open to playing Worm? It's
I
literally
would love
a
to
mud
play
with
Worm.
graphics.
I don't have time for another full-time job.
That's why you got to get the private server version and just boost all those rates up.
It's like people when
But
they tell me, "Oh, why don't you play Factorio?" I'm like, "Because I play Dwarf Fortress. What do you expect me to? What do you think I'm made out of free time here?"
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'd love to play Worm. I probably would love Worm Online, but I think I've said this to you before, Arch. I would probably adore Worm. I don't have the brain capacity for another game like that. This works for me. World Seed works because it's so low maintenance. I can get everything that I want out of an MMO, minus all of the tuft that ruins MMOs for me. Other people.
Yeah, no, I understand it. And I play Elder Scrolls almost entirely solo. I have a guild that I'm with. I hang with them. But I don't do events with them. If one of them's looking to run a dungeon, I'll be like, I'll come along. But I play solo, and I enjoy the solo playstyle. Having to deal with other people in games is painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other people are pain.
Which is sad, because I used to play MapleStory, and way back when. Don't make that face.
I played it for an hour.
I got banned from MapleStory.
Sounds like you played it too much.
And also banned from Nexon games for 50 years.
What for?
Only 50 years, really?
Did you hack?
Years, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Were you hacking?
You bet you. I was hacking. I was walking into non-PvP zones and one-tapping people with bugged gear. You bet I was hacking. I was a small child, okay?
I love everyone I talk to about MapleStory. They're like, oh yeah, I used to play that. I used to hack. I'm like, I'm beginning to think that no one didn't hack in MapleStory.
Some of us were just good at getting caught.
Yeah, no, I used to just hang with my friends who did. So, oh hey, I need this item, and they're like, okay. And then they'll come up to me 2 days later and go, here's this really rare item that, frankly, you can only get if you're sitting there doing something to kill everything on the map every second. But back to the point of being social, there used to be a town in there called Hennessy's. And people would hang around there. That was like the just place to hang around, Channel 1 Hennessy's. And everyone started being called Henny Hoes because, that would be where you'd go with all your cosmetics and you'd just show off. And I used to spend so much time just hanging around there with my cosmetics showing off. And now I can't stand people in MMOs. And sometimes I look back and go, 16 years ago, what changed? Why do I hate socializing so much anymore?
That's because you were the obnoxious one and you didn't realize it.
Just spend 5 seconds at Lumbridge Castle in RuneScape, and you'll be like, I've been here before. Like, who are these people? What's going on here?
I don't have 10k gold to buy a girlfriend.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Like, when I played RuneScape originally in like middle school, you'd log on and people would be like, oh, I want to trade. Now, maybe they were doing this and I just don't remember because I was blind to it as a kid. But now I would log on and it's just literally a bunch of nonsense. Like, oh, pay me to be your girlfriend or pay, this or that. I'm like, what are you talking? What is anybody here talking? Aren't you playing the game? No one here is playing the game. You're all just being weird with each other about being each other's girlfriends and buying stuff. You can't even do that.
You think
that's not
even
weird? A mechanic in the game.
You should go on VR chat sometime.
Oh, I do spend some time. I've been to a club on VR chat, like a rave club. It's pretty interesting.
VR chat
Terrifying.
manages to be the most terrifying thing for me, but also the most I'm not sure if awe-inspiring is, but it's amazing what they've managed to create. And then it's also terrifying what they've done with that creation.
It's very interesting VR chat because if we're talking about social interactions in games, usually games facilitate social interaction through some kind of mechanics, whether it be typing in messages and they pop up above your head, or trading, or like emotes where your character will dance or something like that. And these sort of middlemen between you and the other person create a social environment that doesn't really include your personal social dispositions. Because you could, I could show up at a club in whatever, World of Warcraft or something, and make my character do, break dance or whatever I want. And I don't care. But in VR chat, I went to this club and I found myself standing by the door and not talking to anybody. And then I realized this is such a good social interaction that I've become an indoor kid all over again. I've gone full circle. Like, I don't even want to be here because this is so effectively social that I don't like being here.
The game's so social that you don't want to play it.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't like bars. I don't like clubs. So I came to this VR club thinking, oh, but it's virtual. And then I got there and I'm like, but this is so real that I just actually don't like this. I'm going home. I'm going to go do something else.
I'm going to take this headset off and go drink alone.
Yeah, right.
Oh, even games have become too social for me.
To me, it's not that games become too social, but for me, the thing that truly scares me about VR chat is that VR chat is it's finally, man, like everybody's trying to create a video game that's real, right? Like that's just seems to be the obsession with a lot of game creators. And VR chat is the first example that I can point at where it's just like, oh, that's just human interaction. But it's human interaction minus like the border of appearance. You know? Like it's really difficult to walk up and speak to certain people. Like for me, I walk into a bar and there's a really pretty girl. I'm not going to go talk to her because that's terrifying. And her boyfriend will probably beat me up. So, but you walk into VR or you put on a headset and you are whatever your avatar is, that barrier is gone. And that is terrifying to me. Truly, truly terrifying. Because on one hand, I'm somebody completely different, but the person that I'm talking to, I don't even... Like, I get creeped out when someone puts up a Kickstarter for their video game and they don't use their real name. Because I fear you're using an alias, you're going to vanish. That is multiplied by 50,000 when it's a person I'm talking to right in front of me.
Yeah, and it's very real. Like I was saying with the club experience, like it's just so... it brings all of your real social, whether it's anxieties or just disinterests or whatever, it just brings your real social self into the situation. And now all of a sudden you're like, this is just like talking to people. This is like talking to real people. I'm not playing a game anymore. And sometimes better, sometimes worse.
You know what they say, you can never trust a cat girl.
It's true.
I thought you were going to say you can never trust a cactus, and I was about to agree with you.
That's why you go for the fox girls, okay? They're always trustworthy.
I just like to remind everybody that the best thing that Death Stranding gave us was a very, 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 very well rendered Monster Energy can, which is a playable character in VR chat if you know what you're doing.
Oh yeah, like the character design in VR chat is so cool. Like it's always funny whenever VR chat comes up, because I've got a friend who is just so into it. Like they're into the scene. They are a DJ at one of the clubs. And they go through all of that. And every time the concept of the metaverse comes up, or people looking at Ready Player One and going, oh my God, imagine if that was a thing. Everyone in VR chat's just like, yeah,
Show
imagine.
Up. We're already doing it.
yeah. Come hang out with my Fox Girl clan and be a monster can.
Yeah, I don't know. Stuff scares me. People scare me. How did we get here? What were we talking about? World Seed, I think?
Yes.
Tekkud, Elden Ring, go.
Okay, that's actually a pretty smooth transition, because we're talking about limiting social interaction on a multiplayer game. FromSoft has always had a really great way of doing that. I've been playing a lot of Elden Ring. It's the first AAA game I've bought in, I don't know how long, maybe 5+ years. I don't typically shell out for these big name games, but I did play Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. So I was like, I know I like the FromSoft game. So I picked it up, and everyone was raving about it, and it's actually pretty good. And it's been distracting me from all of my productive pursuits for the last 2 weeks or so. But I think it's very nice. Elden Ring has this excellent, almost, you might even say perfect balance of exploration and freedom and punishment and reward, where it's very difficult to find yourself stuck in a bad place in the game. And it's also very difficult to find yourself just cruising through any part of the game. You're always challenged a little bit. And sometimes you want to bring in friends and stuff and other people to play with, but luckily there's no friend lists, and they don't try to add you or anything. You just beat the boss and then it kicks them out of there. And maybe there's like a website or something where it's like lost connections for Elden Ring. But
it's Craigslist.
But it's a fantastic game. And I mean, Elden Ring's probably not the first pick most fitting genre for a podcast like this that's usually revolving around indie games and stuff. But FromSoft does have a very specific flavor to their games, which kind of feels indie-ish to me. Obviously, it's not an indie game, but their commitment to this exact sort of experience, instead of trying to umbrella out and be like Call of Duty or something, it really feels good. It feels I can't think of the word. Just focused.
Are you trying to say that, like, instead of like adhering to what everybody else is doing, they have a design and they're sticking to it? I think might be what you're trying to say.
Yeah, and when people talk about FromSoft just doing Souls remakes, or they're just reskinning a Souls game, they kind of are. But the thing is, if you've played Dark Souls, Elden Ring is very much the same. But I really applaud them because they made this game that was really good, and it was original too. The way that it works, the mechanics in it were very original. And instead of saying, okay, well, how do we make this more like other games for the sake of expanding it or a profit or something, they said, what if we did these 5 things different? I got an idea. Let's make the game again, but this time we'll make it with these 5 things different, because I bet that would be better. And then they did it again, and now they did it again with Elden Ring.
So there's one thing I want to say, just as a clarification. I'm not a fan of playing Souls-like games. I am a chill gamer that likes to be able to turn my mind off, and I don't like raging at games. And Dark Souls is very much one of those really, really punishing games that, by the time you win, you feel good because you've gotten past all of the having your ass handed to you. Whereas I put in the work, I took all the steps, and now I've done that. What them constantly reiterating the mechanics like that allows them to do is to really innovate with the story and build these worlds. Like, they got Miyazaki and who was that other guy? The guy that never finishes anything. George Martin.
Yes.
Yeah.
The big focus of Elden Ring wasn't check out the really cool mechanics. It was check out the world we've built.
Yeah.
And that's so yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Like, they had this awesome game, and they were like, it's awesome. Everybody knows Dark Souls is awesome. But I feel like it would have been better if maybe it was more of an open world. I got an idea. Let's remake it, but this time it'll be an open world. Mostly the same game. We're just going to make it a little bit better, and I bet you they're going to make another one, and it's going to be different in just a few ways that make it better. And I applaud them for sticking to this thing they've created and just tweaking it, just layering on like a little more icing every time. It's just going to be a cake that's just made of icing by the end of it. It's going to be delicious.
Well, the two of you have been talking about Elden Ring. I've been looking for a screenshot or an image, and I can't find it now. But a while ago, there was this image that was flying around of Call of Duty, and it was like the last 5 Call of Duty games, and it was like a screenshot of each of them side by side, and it just said, spot the difference. What's the most recent one? And they all look identical. So if you really want to talk about like reskinning the same game every year, we shouldn't be pointing at FromSoft. We should be pointing at Activision. But
that's the funny thing with Call of Duty as well, because they went through a real phase where it was just, okay, we're releasing. I think the joke was even like, let's just get rid of all pretense. Just like how you can get like, NBA 2K22 or NBA, or FIFA such. Just have COD 22, COD 23. Just accept that
there's probably close to 20 of them now anyway. Like, they're not even that far off.
Like, no. I just mean like a yearly release.
No, I know what you mean.
Basically for that season. And, so there's always that joke. But then there's also the, how it started. And they were talking about like, Call of Duty is going to be like a real gritty one that doesn't shy away from the horrors of war and is not designed to glorify it. And we wanted to make it real true to earth. And then there was like, Call of Duty now, and it's Warzone players are farming King Kong's testicles for easy experience. And it's like...
With a helicopter.
Yeah.
You take the helicopter and you fly between King Kong's legs, because they have a Godzilla and King Kong event where halfway through the match, Godzilla and King Kong walk across the map and punch each other, and then you can shoot at them for extra points. But if you take a helicopter and you ram it into the side of King Kong, you get points. But the easiest way to do that is you go in between his legs and you fly right up in between his legs, and you just sit there and it just levels you up like nobody's business.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know too much. I don't have any insight on the industry, but what it feels like to me is that these first-person shooters like Call of Duty have entered a sort of arms race, or not necessarily an arms race for features, because otherwise they'd be a lot better, right? But sort of like an arms race for relevance, where Call of Duty needs to make another Call of Duty game in 2 years, because next year someone else is making a new version of their game. And they're going to move, all the player base is going to be like, well, this one's newer. And then Call of Duty's like, well, we have to be newer again, so release another one. Like the FIFA and stuff.
Exactly. You know? No one wants to play an old Call of Duty game.
And the weird thing is, people accuse FromSoft of reskinning their games.
Yeah. What I like is when there's like a new version of Call of Duty and the same bug comes in as the old version. And you're like, well,
while we're talking about Call of Duty stuff, did you know that Call of Duty ran on the Quake engine right up until Call of Duty Ghosts?
Like,
I did not.
The engine they made Quake on?
Yeah, they were still running on Quake 4 until after Ghosts. Ghosts was the last Call of Duty game to run on the Quake engine. Which is just wild. It's like somewhere deep down inside was like this old code that made Quake. They're running on different tech now, but it was just bizarre to read about that.
But yeah, I mean, but when it comes to like FromSoft, right? Like, yeah, sure, a lot of the game is from the last game, but only the good parts. And they introduce these new things that are really, really helpful. And they even do it from their other games, like Bloodborne. Some of the features in Elden Ring are from Bloodborne. And they were like, hey, this worked really well. Let's just stick it into Dark Souls. Dark Souls is only going to get better every single time we make a game. And Arsh, you had said before about not liking it because you're a chill gamer. And I wanted to get this comment in. In my opinion, or from the way I feel when I play Dark Souls, I'm more relaxed playing, Elden Ring than when I play Dwarf Romantic. No joke. When I'm playing Elden Ring, I feel 100% in control of my own fate. And if I die 10 times to a boss, whatever, man. It's just a long fight, and occasionally I die throughout it. But I'm there. I'm pressing the buttons. I'm losing because I'm screwing up. No big deal. But then I get into games where it's chill because it is relaxing music and ambiance and whatever. But what the game is actually doing is dealing me a hand. And when games deal me a hand, I'm like, come on, game. Really? You're going to screw me like this? More water tiles? I need train tracks. I told you, train tracks. And I'm like, oh, God. But, in Elden Ring, I'm like, oh, I died. Whoops.
I love it.
Funny as I completely agree.
There's two types of people who play games. Those who think Dwarf Romantic is the most beautiful, relaxing game ever, and those who think it has been sent by, whatever vengeful god out there has decided to curse them. And there's no in between. There's no like, oh yeah, it's all right, I play it, but it's always like, no, I hate it. It gets me so angry. I'm so anxious. And then another one's like, I'm so relaxed, I could cry while playing it. I just want to live in it. Like, I built this little village and it's got a train nearby. I honestly am so the opposite, because I know I'm a bad player, right? That's the problem I have. I'm not particularly good at games. I've never been someone that's like, I don't think I've ever played a ranked game of anything and ever actually ranked up.
It's
it's
really interesting to me because I have no interest in playing FromSoft games because of the style of game. It doesn't lend itself to my skill set. I'm not good at the hand-eye coordination. I look at those games and I understand where the difficulty is and why people enjoy them, and also why I have almost no interest in actually playing them. And I played Dark Souls 1, so I do have some base knowledge. I got pretty far in, but never finished it. And So I have like that knowledge of why I wouldn't like it. But what baffles me is when people are constantly talking about the difficulty, because I'm a disabled person and playing those games is very difficult for me. But like the difficulty curve, it's like playing a rhythm game. It's a matter of like understanding the patterns and adhering to them. Whereas everybody goes on about how big of a big kid gamer they are because they're so great at Dark Souls. And I'm just like, all right, I'd like to see you scream when you lose 17 hours of a Caves of Cud run because you got shot by an invisible boss that you thought was dead already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I've done that. That's rage-inducing.
I feel like Dark Souls or FromSoft games are very like, they're difficult in the way that learning to play guitar is difficult. Sure, if you don't like to invest yourself into trying and learning and taking time to get better at something, then you probably won't like it. But lots of people, if they want to learn how to play guitar, will happily go through years of getting better through the course of being bad. And so a FromSoft game puts you 100% in control of your results. Elden Ring is the best game I've ever played in terms of balancing with the player. It doesn't push you around, but it doesn't let you push it around. And so
that's it. There's telegraphed moves. That guy, let me solo her. He's someone that just knows the move sets.
Yeah.
He comes in, he sees the moves coming, he gets out of the way, he knows when to attack, when to push. And yeah, I do think there is a difference with that versus being good at COD, where you are literally up against a random enemy because it's players. There's no
and
telegraphing.
You don't know the meta.
That's just and even if you know the meta, it's usually if you come up against someone else who knows the meta, it's how quickly can you react to a situation, what's your loadout, what have you got, and all of this. And that's where for me, I find myself like I don't enjoy playing those games ranked either. Anything that sort of challenges me as a person, I challenge me as a person enough,
I challenge me as a person by getting out of bed in the morning.
That's it. Come on. Let's get up before midday. We got this.
So, Arch, did you get up before midday today and play some Apico? I think that's how you say it.
I think it's Apico because
Apico?
When you're talking about bees, it's apiculture and apiary.
Wow.
So Apico kind of makes sense to me.
I'm not going to claim to be an expert in this kind of subject, honey.
Good. I got nothing. I played this game earlier this week. Absolutely amazing game. Apico. It is everyone that came in was like, oh, so they made the beekeeping, the forestry pack from Minecraft into a solo game, did they? And so it takes a lot of I guess if you've played Minecraft and you've played the forestry one with all the beekeeping stuff, you'd understand a lot of the mechanics of it. Basically, your goal is to repopulate the bees, bring the bees back. And when you start, there's only a few species. You then can crossbreed them, and then you can discover others through various means. And it's a fun little game in which really gets into the sort of nitty-gritty with beekeeping. So you're breeding bees and putting them in hives to make honeycomb. If you want honey, you've got to go into a different hive. If you want to just breed them, there's another hive for that. And the goal is to basically crossbreed them and start releasing them to repopulate the world with the bees. And it's a real fun, chill game that is like, it's like a not isometric, but it's a top-down view, like a 3/4 view, 2D game in an open world that's procedurally generated. And it is, again, just so chill. You go around finding bees, you then breed them yourself. You can unlock certain things by breeding new bee types. Like, you get the common bee, and then you get the forest bee. You breed them together. You breed them together by basically putting them together to create a queen, because two make a queen. And then you can get
so
like
that's
the
how it
vertebrae. Yeah.
Smash them together enough and they become a mom. Right?
It's okay, so it's not scientifically accurate.
How does the bird factor into this discussion?
Now.
Oh, no.
I'm not talking about the birds and the bees on this stream.
Yeah, we're allowed to swear now. We should dive in feet first necessarily.
Cue next week's stream. So we're no longer allowed to swear because we got carried away with it. But yeah, so absolutely beautiful game, and some proceeds of the game go towards the Save the Bees Foundation as well, which I thought was really good. So they've even got a website that's in there that's showing all of the things that are happening with bees over the world, and so it's really, really cool. And plus, you can make mead. That's basically how you make.
Can you make alcohol?
Well, okay. It's called AP Cola, but you literally put water and honey in a keg, and then you take what's out of it later and then bottle it. So
can I mod the game to say mead instead of cola?
I was gonna thumbs down it if I couldn't get any meat out of this. Honestly, I was gonna leave an angry review.
So I've been aware of this game for some time, but my first realization that it had been released was because I followed the developer of this on Twitter, and they posted a tweet of a negative review that literally just said one sentence: "Woke leftist trash." And the dev had a screenshot of this review with the thumbs down and says, "Hey kids, want to play any woke leftist trash?" with the eyes emoji. So I was like, "Oh, okay."
That's hilarious. Why they probably called it woke leftist trash?
Because they have pronouns in the titles of the people's
names.
Because
they have pronouns when you talk to people.
Yeah.
Imagine being so annoyed by it.
Yeah. Imagine actually getting mad at something that affects you.
Doesn't affect you.
People need to get their priorities straight, but it's the internet, Their priorities were out of whack as soon as they logged on.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Apico. That game looks adorable, honestly.
It really is, and it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of funny because the professor hates you for some reason. The professor's like, "I know everything about bees, you suck." And then the smith who also lives with him is like, "I'd love to help you, but the professor hates you." And then you talk to your granny all the time. She's like, "Oh, you're doing great, sweetie. I wish your grandpa was here to see." Aww. And that's it. They're the only people you talk to. It's just constant reassurance followed by someone beating you down, and then someone going, "I'd love to help you, but the other person hates you."
I was keeping bees when you were still in diapers, kid. You're not going anywhere in life. Grumble, grumble, grumble.
Oh, you've played the game too. I'm pretty sure he says something almost exactly like that. But yeah, no, it's an absolutely beautiful game, and yeah, I'm actually really pleased with the choice I made for it, because I had no clue what I was going to stream on Tuesday, and I was looking through some games and I went, "Oh, this one looks fun. I'll buy that and try that." Did not regret.
I do think that this is kind of fantastic, because a couple of weeks ago, Arch, you were complaining that you had nothing to stream but Stardew, and now you've got Sandrock and Mexico and Stardew.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because actually talking to you and you all just stream something else, have a go at it. What's the worst that could happen? So I kind of took that advice, and it's been going good so far.
Worst that could happen is nobody shows up, which means you need to stream something else.
Yeah. Which means it's always fun like that. You start streaming a game, no one shows up, and you switch back to your old game, and
shows up.
15 minutes later, people start popping and going, "Oh, hey, I didn't know you were live." Like, yeah, I saw you there. You got the notification? Nah.
They definitely did.
Yeah.
They're definitely lying. I'm going to talk about another tiny game nobody's heard of for a second. So I played this morning I played a bunch of a game called Anti-Crypt. I played it for about 2 hours. Anti-Crypt is spelt A-N-T-E Crypt. This is the first game that was released by a studio called Punk Cake, who you may have heard of because recently they put out a game called Shotgun King, which I was yelling about a whole bunch.
Yes.
So this is a top-down shmup. It is available on itch.io, not on Steam. I'll plop a link in our chat if you guys want to look at it. But it's got kind of a striking art style. It's got a bunch of like mind-breaky effects, which you can turn off, thank the Lord. But it's an interesting shmup because you can only shoot in the direction of this sphere that is bouncing around the arena. And kind of the whole shtick of the game is you are a antivirus software stopping these weird viruses from infecting humanity's last hard drive. It's a good thing that this is fantasy because otherwise humanity's last hard drive would be screwed. But you have these batteries down at the bottom, and you reload the batteries by standing in the circle. But your laser only goes in the direction of the circle, or your gun, or whatever you're wielding, or your grenade only goes to where the circle is. And the circle is just bouncing around. So you have to kind of like dodge the enemies, dodge their fire, as well as following this little circle to then fire at these bug things that are coming into the arena. It's a very simple little game loop, and I don't know how much I like it because there's points where it becomes kind of frustrating, but considering it's a punk cake game and they made it in a month, it's a really neat idea. I think it would do really well to have something like a dodge roll, but because they make their games with specific limitations, and this game's limitation was that it was going to be a top-down shooter with no analog control and only one button, and that's to fire, and then the alternate fire button, so 2 fire buttons. It's very neat as an idea, and it ends up becoming quite satisfying to execute those shots. However, there was several times when I was playing it when I felt like I just kind of lost because the circle decided to bounce in a direction that didn't make sense. But Puncake's a neat studio. I mean, it's 2 people. One of them was the co-founder of Motion Twin, who put out Dead Cells, and then the other one was working on an engine, who I actually spoke with this morning as part of an interview that I'm working on for Shotgun King. And so I'm working through their backlog now and recording footage and checking out their previous works. And this was the first one on the list, so that's the first one that I took a look at. And it's neat. I've enjoyed my time with it.
It looks like the kind of game where if you ever get stuck in an afternoon and you're like, I've played all my games in my library, or I've played all the ones I'm willing to try to play, and I don't have like too much time. I just want to kind of try out something new and blow stuff up. It looks like the perfect opportunity for that to me.
Yeah.
Just like hop on this weird little game. Almost, it doesn't mean anything when you win or when you lose or how far you get. You just kind of go in there and start laser beaming stuff because you're a little bit bored and tried everything else.
It is a level-based game, so it's 40 levels. It's not like it's randomly generated or anything. So there are 40 like designed levels that you go through. So you do progress through it, and I've beaten the first half of them. All of their games are $6 on itch, or $7 in Canada. But the kind of shtick that they have is you give them €3, which equals out to about $4 or $5 ish on Patreon, and you just get their game every month. They send you an itch.io key and then a Steam key afterwards if they put it on Steam. So it's been enough that I'm supporting them on Patreon now, so I just get their games. They're putting out a game in like 4 days, and I can't wait. It'll be fun.
Nice.
Looking at this, I was like, yeah, this is again a game that's so you know.
Me?
You yourself are a genre.
I am a genre.
You are a genre.
At least I'm not a grenade.
What?
So do you not know that quote?
No.
DayZ founder. I can never remember his name off the top of my head, but the founder of DayZ, who created the mod originally, and then went on to found Rocketworks, which is making that weird survival run-based thing where everybody's in space suits. He's making that as well as Stationeers. That guy, when he left the DayZ team, said, "I am a grenade. I pull out the pin and give everybody ideas, and then I leave them holding it." That was his quote about why he was leaving the studio. Basically, he claims that he comes up with really good ideas and then they fall apart in his hands, so he leaves before they fall apart. So at least I'm not a grenade. I'll take genre.
Right.
The funny thing is I find this super relatable. Like, I have great ideas, but if you leave it to me to accomplish them, they will not be accomplished.
Yep.
I will give great ideas to other people, but geez, when it comes to following through on my ideas, my ADHD just goes brrr.
Squirrel.
Oh yeah. I'm actually seeing I'm seeing all these games that you play, Blind, and I actually they seem very, very different, but I'm getting the same feeling from all of them. I'm getting strong, like, late 90s nostalgia of different genres. The MMO you were talking about before, which was World Seed, reminds me of a game called WarOnline.net, which wasn't late 90s. It was a little after that, but it was kind of the same feel. And this totally feels like a Flash game, like addictinggames.com Flash game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm seeing the connection between these. They're different, but they're the same.
I have an aesthetic, and my aesthetic is games made by either very small teams or one crazy person who's really dedicated to an idea.
So Flash games, yeah.
So I maintain that, like, Blind watched The Matrix when Mr. Anderson was still in The Matrix and was like, I want that setup. All of the different PCs, the tapes, late nights, passed out listening to some weird music. DOS console window up.
We're in a video call right now. If I push like 2 buttons, I could swap my mic setting out and my camera out for a record player and play you some music if you really want. But I always shock people because I don't have a TV. I just have cassette tapes.
But you've got like 300 records or something too, right? You said on a previous episode.
Yeah, roughly.
I've got.
You've also got the internet.
That's true.
But I work on the internet. That's job.
No, but you've got a computer and a monitor.
That's
Who
job.
needs a TV nowadays?
That's job. I don't want to entertain myself in front of job. Do you go to work to watch TV?
Also,
yes.
I feel like being at a desk eliminates the lounging. You can't relax at a desk, in my opinion. I can't relax at a desk. I just can't.
The one time I do relax at a desk is when I'm playing Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a lie. That's a segue.
Is it awakening?
I'm not on a segue here. I haven't fallen over yet.
My segue, I was going to throw in a segue of, speaking of games that constantly update new versions and sequels and reiterate themselves.
Dwarf Fortress?
Yeah.
Well, Dwarf Fortress is a sequel.
Sequel to what?
Sequel.
Slaves to Armok.
Yeah,
Dwarf Fortress is Slaves to Armok, God of Blood, Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah, you didn't know it was Chapter 2? Come on. What? You ever heard of
Histories
the game
of
before?
randomly generated word and randomly generated word.
I'm pretty sure the only way to figure that out is to actually load up the title screen of Dwarf Fortress. I don't think it's marketed anywhere as Chapter 2 of anything.
The full title for Dwarf Fortress is as follows, and I just loaded up the game to check. Slaves to Armok, God of Blood, Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress, Histories of Cupidity and Toil is what I got.
Does he update that every major update? Does he add something there?
The histories of da-da-da and da-da-da? No. It just pulls two random words out of the game's dictionary. I just relaunched the game. Slaves to Armok, God of Blood, Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress, Histories of Curiosity and Determination.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see what else I got. Dwarf Fortress, okay, Slaves to Armok, God of Blood, Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress, Histories of Determination and Destruction.
Sounds about right. And every fortress is actually a sequel to the last fortress. So it's full of sequels, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, Dwarf Fortress is, Arch, I don't know if you've seen this before, but just go to Google Images and type in Slaves to Armok. A-M-R-O-K. Because Slaves to Armok God of Blood was the game that Zach and Tarn worked on before they worked on Dwarf Fortress. And the end goal for it was to basically be what Dwarf Fortress is now, this endless forever game that randomly generates itself that's endlessly replayable, but it was fully 3D. And
it seems to have graphics?
Yep. And now it might make more sense why Dwarf Fortress hasn't had graphics for so long.
Yeah, Dwarf Fortress is actually a compromise. Dwarf Fortress was a game made because the original idea was just too big for the team, like 2 people, almost just one person. I'm pretty sure Tarn does the majority of the work, especially since it's such a code-heavy game. But anyway, yeah, Dwarf Fortress is a compromise.
Yeah, I'm seeing some
Dwarf Fortress
of those.
was a 3-month side project to distract themselves from the game that they knew they would never finish. And they're still working on that 3-month side project.
I'm looking at those pictures, and I think I could find some Worm Online pictures from the early days that match it. But also when I look up Slaves to Armok, it's got, IMDb for some reason has an entry on Dwarf Fortress. Like Dwarf Fortress 2. It looks like the Steam version, but it says Slaves to Armok, God of Blood, Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress. And I was looking at those pictures going, like, I don't get it. It's full graphics. It's got the dwarves there. It's got trees there. Like, how is this bad? Then I realized it's the updated shots that they're doing for the Steam launch.
Yep. Also, you can still download the original unfinished, barely playable Slaves to Armok God of Blood at bay12games.com/Armok if you really want to see a website that was made in 2005.
There's a synopsis of Dwarf Fortress. I'm just going to... Wow, okay.
They have
it's
a
too big to get...
of Dwarf Fortress?
In the year 233, Kakame Awerdinaday was the elf king of the dwarves. Wanting to expand his domain, he decided to set forth brave dwarves. And it just goes to all of this, and it's like paragraph.
Someone just ripped Legends mode and was like, this is the story of Dwarf Fortress, the game.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Like, this is literally just how it's...
Man, I need to review. You. You've just given me content. I'm going to make a video reviewing the IMDb page for the story of Dwarf Fortress. Thank you for that. That's my Saturday.
I like how it's not even a synopsis. They're literally writing a story. I mean,
yeah,
but Ernest had been too drunk in the colonist briefing. He didn't know that he had blah, 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 blah. Like, this is just a written novel.
They wrote fan fiction.
Yeah.
Except there's no like paragraphs. There's no editing.
Huh.
It's a novel formatted like a synopsis. Oh my god. Could you imagine like Dwarf Fortress the disc set and you put on the back of the box like just a freaking novel of a Legends mode where it's just like in the year 153, Urist finally joined and settled down at the site of here in the fields of whatever.
Steven Seagal is Dwarf Fortress.
You joke, but I know I had a viewer pop in who was asking some questions about how to play Dwarf Fortress, and then their questions got kind of telling, and we asked what version they were playing, and they backed out to the main menu, and turns out they were playing on version 3 or 0.3, which was like 2014. And we asked why they were playing on such an old version. And he said, "Oh, that's what was on the disc." And we're
Where
like,
did you find this disc?
Pardon? He goes, "Well, you see, I just bought it at a store." And we're like, pardon? Apparently, this person went to a used games store and bought a copy of Dwarf Fortress in a case with a printout of Dwarf Fortress as the case. And it came with a copy of the How to Play Dwarf Fortress book, which it came out in like 2013,
there's
12.
such a thing.
Yeah, it exists. Zach and Tarn helped work on it, but like there's an updated PDF from it, but the book itself hasn't been updated since it was released. There was only one printing of it. It's a softcover book of how to play Dwarf Fortress. And someone somewhere owns a couple copies of those and is selling them off with boxed copies of an install of Dwarf Fortress.
I still remember. I had a friend who was. She was, do you ever see that? Trying to think the most polite way to put it. Do you ever see that episode of How I Met Your Mother, where Katy Perry was Sweetie or Sunshine or something? Because she'd come in with the dumbest statement, everyone would be like, "Oh, Sweetie." She came in. My friend came in so proud of herself. She had just bought a copy of this this image editing software. Like, she got it on eBay. She only paid $10, super cheap. Pulled out a disc of GIMP, which is a free to play. Yep, free to download. And I was like, "Oh, sweetie."
Oh, yeah. It's like buying a copy of Audacity. But yeah, so I don't often get to talk about Dwarf Fortress on this podcast because, frankly, like, I'm the only person in this group of Halcyon Frequency who plays Dwarf Fortress at any regular interval. Bellinair, one of our teammate from Finland who was on the last two episodes, he actually has some credits in Stone Sense. He helped make some of the sprites for it. And has played a lot of Dwarf Fortress, but not in a long time. And I managed to get him to play a couple of forts about a year and a half ago, but it's been a while again. So for me, I guess the question is, when you go about starting up a fortress, Tekkud, what is your kind of go-to setup? Like how do you go about starting a fortress when you're playing Dwarf Fortress?
Well, if I want to do and this is usually the case, if I want to do a very kind of big idea fort and I want it to have maybe waterfalls inside or a very specific setup in my metal industry or whatever, my first step is actually to make a mini fortress on the surface just out of wood. I build a hut. And I basically create that as a staging point that's going to last me for 1 or 2 years, to then carefree mine out and develop this framework for my fortress to be. So I should say there's an important caveat here. There's a reason I didn't make a how to start a fort video on my channel, because I am an obsessive player. I lock on to certain ideas and I laser focus on them. So when I start my forts, I do that staging fort because it allows me to laser focus on, let's say, the garbage dump of my fort, which can be way out of the league of what you'd expect a garbage dump to be. But so my first, I don't recommend players start fortresses the way that I do, but if you're curious, it's usually by creating a sort of overworld shack that I can operate out of. So usually there's some farms, a small 16 farm tiles, a couple of animals breeding, but I'm not doing anything with them yet. 4 beds, a still, and a couple of tables and chairs. And that's pretty much it. There's a hospital in there too, but there's not much to it. Not until I really get digging.
For me, I spend the first bit in Legends mode and I read about the faction a bunch. And then once I'm actually in Fortress mode, I set the population down so I don't get too many migrants right out of the gate. I usually set it down to about 50 or 60. And then I spend like the first 2 years obsessively reading about every single dwarf in the fort and just kind of like letting them live in kind of the rock pit that ends up inevitably getting dug out somewhere, put up a bunch of beds, make a little dormitory and a makeshift tavern thingy, and just kind of let the dwarves like function for the first 2 years until they eventually live in their lavish wonders. But I kind of wanted to tell a little story about the fortress that I just started this past week, because it is one of the strangest factions I've ever encountered. So dwarven factions have varying like types of cultures and music and gods and things that really kind of give you like a pretty vivid image of the culture of this faction that you're playing with. And the faction that I'm currently playing with, is the plank of something. I need to like actually look on my YouTube channel or remind myself of the name of it. But I built this fort, and pretty quickly we realized that something was off. My first 7 okay, but before I built the fort in like Legends mode, reading about this faction, all of the entirety of this faction is 2 forts. They have 1 mountain home, which is like their main fort, with a very low population, only 300 dwarves, which is pretty low for a mountain home. And then a helix, which is a hill fort, basically a farming hub that is connected to the mountain home and feeds them with food and whatnot. And that helix only has 100 dwarves. I'm like, wow, that's awfully small. So maybe we'll be like helping rebuild a faction. The Plank of Nations is the name of the faction. And we get in there, and I get my starting 7, and they're all female. I'm like, wow, that's strange. Because normally it's like kind of a mix, right?
Yeah.
Start playing. First migrant wave shows up. Every single one of the migrants is female. This is also strange. Where's my bearded, like, dwarves? Building away. The third migrant wave shows up. All female except for 4. There was about 10 in the third one. So half of them are male. Okay. All the male are fisher dwarves. I'm like, this is really weird. I look at the faction. The queen of the faction is a Gelder. I start looking into their...
found yourself a cult.
I start looking into their gods. All of the gods are represented by female dwarves. One of them skeletal dwarves. One of them is a skeletal female dwarf. And their gods are all gods of misery and torture, death and destruction. The one male represented god is the god of reproduction and pregnancy.
Pretty sure there's a Nicolas Cage movie about this.
And we're just like sitting there like reading about this faction going like, what in the world? And so I think I've found a cult. Also, the most popular form of music is called future metal, which is pretty fantastic. So I named the tavern the Marsh Pit because Mosh doesn't exist. So we're a bunch of heavy metal Amazons, I guess.
That's
with
hilarious.
A very small portion of the population being male dwarves. And that's the first time I've seen anything like that in Dwarf Fort.
I have a similar female-focused fort. Actually, it's Singe Metal, which I am doing as a bloodline fort with Roland from the Round Table. And I looked up... This is one of the rare times I actually spent a good amount of time looking up the history of my civilization. Usually, I check out what gods they have, and I sort of just kind of infer from there. But in this case, I wanted to know the history of Singe Metal, and every monarch was a queen, and it was like year 250. It was not, no, it was year like 500. So there's like 6 monarchs, and so it was every queen worshipped the same deity, except for the first, who worshipped the deity of fate, ironically dying like the next year. The last queen got turned into a werewolf and then killed somewhere. And the queen that replaced her worshipped the god that had turned her into a werewolf. So it was like this string of queens that worshipped this god. And then as soon as one of them toppled this other statue, they were like, okay, well, we should worship this other god that turned our past queen into a werewolf, out of vengeance or whatever. And there were some other things about fighting joining the elves in combat on like a yearly basis to just repeatedly pummel this goblin site called Watchbad. Every year, we and the elves would just go to Watchbad and beat things up. Like, oh, how many goblins came back this year? Let's stab them. And it was like a sport. It was like a combat sport at that point, like kill the goblins at Watchbad. And there was some interesting history there with them, too. I haven't gone back to see what's happened in the 10 years or something that the fortress has been alive for since we started it. But it was an interesting little history. And it's only similar in the sense that it was also an all-female monarchy over 500 years.
I have a sort of similar story to the Watchbad thing. I had a world that I generated a while ago, which I did a bunch of different forts in. And one of the things that we discovered in this world, because I sometimes will like just upload the world file to like Google Drive or something and give it to chat and let them go nuts with it. One of my audience members found this one goblin fort that was head up and run by a skunk demon who wielded 2 spears. This one goblin fort got attacked about 250 times a year by all of the surrounding sites. Humans, goblins, dwarves, everybody. Everything attacked this one site. And this one demon in this one fort had tens of thousands of kills.
Wow.
Every single year, all of these armies would converge on this one site, and it was just like this unstoppable wall, to the point where I even joined in with my fortress and attacked it a couple of times, and every time all of my soldiers would either die or get captured. Every single time. Eventually, one of my audience members sent in an adventurer and killed it. But it's like...
the ultimate defense, apparently, is just skunk odor. You know, as long as you got that on your side, no one can break you.
It's like trying to fight through smoke. You just can't do it. Like smoke wall appears, it's like I can't see where I'm going. Oh, I'm dead.
I had a world I generated the first time I ever really looked into Legends mode, and I discovered that the undead apocalypse, which happens to most worlds as time goes on long enough, isn't always as flat and bland as you might assume. In this case, this world had succumbed to not a civilization, actually. They started as a group that just popped out of nowhere in the fields someday, led by, what was it, a badger man? Some animal person necromancer. And he had obtained the help of a dwarf who had fought in a couple of wars and become quite good as a warrior. And that dwarf died. He resurrected him, and this dwarf became a very talented warrior and undead, and won many fights on behalf of, I remember, Badger Man will say, necromancer. And then at a certain point, this necromancer, thanks to the exploits of this dwarf, who had his own like emotional past, basically took over the entire world. This one necromancer faction, and they had killed the goblins. They were wiped out. Everyone was pretty much wiped out. There was like one dwarven civilization with 2 sites still alive. More animals were alive than dwarves in those sites. And it's funny because they weren't even listed on the civilization list. They weren't a civilization. They owned all of the sites, though. They owned the entire world. But they started as this lowly band of bandits, you know, from some fields led by some Badger Man necromancer.
Man, it's like the story of Steve Jobs and Apple.
Right.
Lowly band of bandits, and now they run the world.
I
do actually have some like sort of news. Every Friday and Monday, Zach and Tarn have been taking turns posting on Bay 12. And for the premium release, Zach posted this today, where he says, let's talk about toggleable difficulty settings. There will be difficulty settings where you can adjust the wealth triggers and frequency of invasions, thieves, and beast attacks, and it will be customizable, just as if you'd been editing the text files, but you can set them when you embark. So we're going to get adjustable difficulty settings for each embark.
Nice.
Which is actually extremely cool, because I thought that they would be tied to the world, and currently it's tied to your text settings in the INI files in the back end. But like being able to set frequency of invasions at the start of an embark is really cool, because you can just be like, I'm in a very violence-heavy zone. Fuck me up, fam. Let's go.
Yeah, and they are world settings right now because they're in the advanced world generation menu. Those things are listed in there, so they are currently set for the whole world. Maybe you can change them after a world's generated through the init files, but like right now, you pretty much set it for the whole world. And I think, in my opinion, well, first of all, that's awesome. That's a solution. I also think that certain things, it might be great if they excluded certain things that you make as a source of wealth that invaders will consider. Because you know how you have like created wealth, imported wealth, and then you have a breakdown of what kind of categories are generating your wealth. I think it would be nice if invaders ignored prepared meals, unless they fix the absurd value of prepared meals. Because once you cook like 5 pot roasts, the entire world is like, we need to invade this utopian bastion of wealth and fame because they have 5 pot roasts, okay? And we couldn't even dream of tasting such a miracle.
Yeah, I really hope that they fix the value of meals, because it is a little bit ridiculous that like a well-cooked steak in Dwarf Fortress is more valuable than like an entire house worth of valuables.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that Zach mentions here, which I think is incredible, which is, and if you think that that's a waste of time, you can now buy them off, as they will demand an artifact as a bribe before they attack. Which
that's very interesting.
Is something I've been shouting about for a long time.
Yeah,
because I've always wanted a giant to show up and demand pants, because giants don't wear pants. Yes, Arch, you're still on this podcast.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's okay. It's Dwarf Fortress time.
It's Dwarfin time.
I'm just thinking, like, because I play RimWorld a lot, and it's like, that'd be nice there too if they turned up and went, "Hey, we're going to attack. Give us this.
Give us your table."
Yeah.
With the inscriptions on it, and we'll leave.
You see, the thing is you get that happen when you're roaming in RimWorld. You'll actually get a pop-up that says, one tribesman has accosted your 3 guys in like the best armor, and he demands this your gems or whatever you've got.
It's like 3 space marines.
Otherwise, he'll fight
dude with spear.
Yeah, and it's always really, really off. But it'd be really kind of cool if you had that happen in raids, because it would be like, do I really want to fight them all? Or can I just be like, look, I don't feel like...
Here, take Charlie, it's fine. We don't like him.
I don't feel like dealing with a tribal attack. Go have, all of this extra human leather that I've got sitting down from the last tribal attack.
Well, in RimWorld, they don't give you an option to do any sort of negotiation, but they do have the raiders take a certain amount of stuff and then leave satisfied sometimes. Don't they sometimes take, like, apparently impact wrenches with them and take your doors off and just, like, leave with your doors? They're like, I like this door, never mind what's behind it. We're out of here.
So they can loot things. I don't think I've ever had them steal a door, but
the
they can
earlier
loot your
versions,
tables
they
and
used to do stuff like that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've not... The new raid mechanics are so vastly different. They've all got giant breacher weapons now, and they can just destroy any wall you've got. But yeah, they do. If they can't find anyone to fight, they eventually give up and just loot everything and leave.
One other thing that Zach notes at the bottom of this is also the number of trees that it takes to piss off the elves has been greatly reduced.
Really?
Yeah. So previously, it would take like 120 trees or something per year to piss them off, and then they would show up and ask you to not chop down more than 120 trees a year, and then they'd like lower that number slowly. But now it's been greatly reduced. I've always been pro elves because I think that they bring the best trade goods and are boring to fight. But apparently they've all. I'll read this little excerpt from what Zach wrote. And I'm gonna make a video about this later. But the elves are also getting reworked to make them more of a challenge. The number of trees felled that takes to anger them has been greatly reduced, and their attacks are more deadly. These settings can also be changed if you choose, but watch out for when you start in the Savage Lands, as you are in for a surprise along with the rest of the horrible stuff we have planned for the weekend. So apparently they're going to post something over the weekend. So probably by the time this podcast is up, but like...
Interesting. I hope that if they want trees to piss off the elves, that's fine. The elves can be even more radical in their ideology, but please don't let mushroom trees piss off the elves. Like, why can't... I mean, it's fungus, right? They shouldn't care. They shouldn't care about tunnel tube. If I want to give them something in a tunnel tube bin, because otherwise the elves are they're kind of a barrier. if you if you're in a place where the elves visit you frequently and they get pissed off that easily, it's like, how do you build beds without going to war with the elves?
So I'd just like to point out the idea of the elves being just blindly looking for a reason to hate you for cutting down any form of tree, even mushroom tree. I mean, it's pretty fitting for an elf, isn't it?
The elves are cannibalistic eco-terrorists. They're basically Dwarf Fortress's PETA. You cut down a tree and they're like, my son! And you're like, the heck is wrong with you there, sir?
But they should, I feel like, because mushroom trees come with their own risks, you know? So I feel like they should be a separate thing with separate risks, and the overland trees. But, you know, this is all stuff I should probably, like, you know, call Tarn on his personal number and rant at him about, because
his email's on the website. You know that, right?
Oh, no, I did not know that, but now that I know.
Bay12games.com/dwarves, and you click contact, and it's Toady1 at bay12games.com.
Listen, Tarn, I'm your greatest influencer. I just want you to know that. I have, like, a lot of subscribers.
Just drink a lot of isopropyl coffee. Call his number and leave a very rambly, drunken message on his voicemail.
Elves shouldn't mushroom trees be happy with it. I don't know, man. Just make it do something about it, Tarn.
The one thing that I do like to point out is, like, you do know that, like, everything that the elves don't want traded to them, if you have a skilled broker, shows up as red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Problem is,
it's all obvious. Just don't trade the red stuff.
Usually, my forts will take advantage of metals, and they'll take advantage of rocks to make containers for things. But in example, this current fort, where the only source of metal is sphalerite, which copper makes ugly bins. I mean, I'm sorry. Copper bins are so ugly, I won't make them.
Bad color.
Yeah. So, and it's at the magma sea. I have to mine between the magma sea to get any metal in my current fort. So I just used wood bins, which sucks. I hate using wood bins, but I did it. So everything is in wood in this fort. So I just can't trade with the elves. They're just like, sorry, guys.
Why don't you make rock pots? And then just put your meals in rock pots and trade them one, like, biscuit, and they'll be happy.
That is a great question. I don't have a satisfying answer for that. I just don't want to.
That's fair. That's what I've been doing in Long Death for decades, because I've got, like, really nothing I can trade to the elves except for, like, swords, and I feel like arming the elves is not a good idea, so I've just been selling them, like, a pot of food, and I'll give them, like, an extra pot of food as a bonus, and they're always thrilled, and then they give me unicorns. It's great. And then I cook the unicorns and give them the unicorns in the pots next time.
I feel like a bunch of Dwarf Fortress players sitting around is exactly the same as a bunch of Warhammer players, not Warhammer, or could be Warhammer, but also D&D players. That is like, oh, my character does this, my party does this, and someone's like, oh yeah, my party did something similar, and then it'll be like, oh yeah, check it. Remember, you know, here's an adventure my party did that was dumb. Then it's like, oh, that's hilarious. Here's an adventure my party did that was dumb. And it just goes back and forth. It's not one-upping, but you're basically sharing the dumb stuff that happens with someone else that finally understands how silly or lucky or dumb it is. And
the thing that's sad about people who play Dwarf Fortress is we don't have friends to play games with. Or it's like me, where we opt to not play games with other people. Or it's like, I love that structure, and I love the storytelling that you get out of D&D. I hate the process of playing D&D.
Look, it can be very hit and miss. I am quite blessed that, like, the people I play with, I met online when I was still in Australia. They were the ones that said, hey, you should come to New Zealand so we can play D&D in person. And I was like, I don't know, that sounds expensive. And they went, hey, here's the plane ticket. And I said, okay, I still need to get my passport. So they're like, hey, here's the money for your passport. By the way, what's your blood type? But no, so they're the people that I met online and basically became friends with. They helped me get over to New Zealand, and we now play D&D twice a week, you know, and it's sort of like the success story of finding a group where they suddenly become real good friends that are more than just people you play D&D with. But I've also played D&D with people who... One DM, we worked out that he was just giving us World of Warcraft quests. Like, we literally got into a place and he's like, oh yeah, there's tons of goblins in there. I'll give you each 50 silver for 5 gold for every goblin ear you bring back. And he's like, I want about 50. And we're just like, okay. And I got a message, is this guy just giving us World of Warcraft quests? Like, it was literally like one of the zones in World of Warcraft. And then we had one that the group that I joined, before I joined, the space opened up because basically this guy couldn't seduce the evil witch and make her his girlfriend. And so there are negatives. You know, you're never going to find that playing Dwarf Fortress that you're going to have a guy like that. Like, it's really good in social circles having a D&D party that you get on with, but there are very many pitfalls.
Yep.
And I can absolutely understand being, don't want
Dwarf Fortress scratches all of the itches of D&D without actually having to play D&D. But it's also, at the same time, an incredibly obsessive management game, which scratches a lot of other itches that D&D doesn't even come close to.
Yeah, look, you said at the start of this, if we haven't convinced Arch to play, I will be playing when it comes out on Steam, right? I want that graphical thing, you know? And I
want it to look pretty.
I want it to look pretty. I mean, look at the last game I played, my time at Sandrock, you know?
It's terrifying. Mix of ludonarrative dissonance. Sorry, I have to drop ludonarrative dissonance like once every 3 podcasts.
Let me quickly Google that.
It basically means it's a bright, colorful game with a dark, dingy storyline, and one doesn't fit the other.
Oh,
is the short version.
It's funny because it's directly for games, yet that also comes. I love it in music as well. Like Hey Ya is one of my favorite examples of that. You know, my baby don't mess around because she loves me so, and this I know for sure. But does she really want to, but can't stand the thought of me walking out the door? Like, and it's all this upbeat song. And it's just that,
or
but
like
in visuals.
Almost any pop punk song where he's just singing about cutting himself in a really happy, upbeat tune.
Except for Adam's song.
But yeah, no, it's Dwarf Fortress is a fantastic game that we could talk about for all day, but we're 2 hours into this recording. We haven't done news yet. So I think we should go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the news from this week.
Hi, this is Tidikiri. I'm a full-time content creator and Twitch streamer focusing on indie and strategy games. I'm advocating accessibility in video games, especially when it comes to simulation sickness. I love chatting with my wholesome community, achievement hunting, and winter. Look for Tidikiri on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon. And now, back to the podcast.
Talk about what games you've got on your phone.
April 1st. We just talk about Clash of Clans for 2 hours.
I've been playing Clash Royale a lot more.
Raid Shadow Legends.
We're not getting paid to talk about Raid Shadow Legends. We can't talk about Raid Shadow Legends.
Yeah. They pay a lot for you to talk about it. Why would we do that for free?
Yeah, naturally. They have to pay us at least $1,000 a person to talk about Raid Shadow Legends on this podcast. Anyway, I'm gonna take us back in for news. And we're back with the Halcyon Frequency Podcast, episode 20. I'm Blind, and I'm hosting, and I'm joined by Tekkud, our guest host, and Archplaysstuff. And today in the news, we're all going to take a moment to laugh at Seth Green for getting his NFT stolen. Did either of you guys catch this when this happened?
I did.
So Seth Green had a Bored Ape, which was supposed to star in its own live-action TV show, with the Bored Ape itself playing a bartender in this show. However, his Bored Ape, which is Bored Ape, of course, number 8398, who's named Fred, by the way, was stolen in a phishing scam out of Seth Green's wallet. And so by NFT BS law, he now no longer has the rights to that image, and thus the production of the show that he has created for this ape to increase the value of the ape, obviously, has now been halted. And someone else has purchased this Bored Ape off of the scammer who stole it from Seth Green. So it's now in the hands of a new owner, and Seth Green is politely asking him to give him the ape.
Oh man, this is it even? I don't even think it qualifies as like poetic justice. It's just funny.
it's not even justice. It's just like, I'm just gonna sit here and enjoy the Schadenfreude for a minute. Like, I don't know too much about Seth Green. Like, I know that he's done a bunch of voice acting work and stuff in video games, and I'm familiar with the name, and I've definitely heard his voice before. But it's like, I can't not laugh at this. And Arch is posting stuff in the from Cyanide and Happiness in the Discord here. What is this, Arch?
Cyanide and Happiness put out a thing saying they won't do NFTs, and they're saying if you see one that was enough, if you bought one by us, you got scammed. Also, lol. And then someone was like, I don't know why you had to add the also lol there. People shouldn't glorify vulnerable people being scammed. To which Cyanide and Happiness replied, NFT bros losing money is funnier than any of our comics. And it's all I can think about, you know. This is funnier than anything Seth Green has done. He could turn around and say it was theatrical art and people would be like, okay, that's funny. But oh my gosh.
It's like watching a clown slip and fall for real. You know, like you were already a clown, so I'm supposed to laugh at you anyway, and now you fell down. I feel like I should be sorry for finding this also funny, but honestly, the show goes on. I mean,
the only thing he could do right now, or the best thing he could do right now, swap out the Bored Ape character for anything else, and just give him an absolute rage for crypto bros, and just have that a running thing. Anytime someone mentions crypto, he just gets really angry because he was scammed once and now he hates it.
I mean, the serious side of this, though, is like, if you purchase a piece of art, like an art piece, and you hang it on your wall, right? And you own the rights to that art piece, let's just say, and you have a picture of it on your blog, and a thief breaks into your house at night and steals the art piece off your wall, takes it, and then sells it to some wealthy person in another country for an exorbitant amount of money. You still own the rights to that image and you can still keep it on your website. That is stolen art and it should be returned to you. But when you have a completely decentralized market like this, there is no legal grounds for the person who's purchased this stolen property to give the ape back whatsoever.
Correct. Yeah, and so that's the funniest thing with NFTs in general, because they argue that that's the benefit of them. You know, they're like, you've got proof of ownership. It is inherently tied to this. You lose that proof of ownership, there is nothing else you can do. And the other thing, I've been trying to find it. It was a tweet by someone who talked about the downside of all of this, and how Seth Green's show was never likely to actually get anywhere, because you have the Bored Apes are procedurally generated, and the only difference is a different background color, right? When you own a Bored Ape, you own the background color as well, the facial expressions. You change that background color, it's a different Bored Ape. You open the eyes, it's a different Bored Ape. You get rid of the halo, it's a different one. He could not have actually animated that, because any animation to it would have changed it and it would have been someone else's work. And so that's why a lot of people are like, you know, how far along was this project? And is this just a bit of a, you know, oh, I was really hoping to do something with this kind of thing? Because yeah, there's a lot that's actually sitting there that doesn't make sense in using, like, it's like buying a Monet and then saying, oh, I can just basically make a wallpaper out of it. I can change it so it looks like a Picasso or something, you know. You own it as a static image. You can't transform it in any way.
Mm-hmm. You can make people pay to look at it, but that's about it.
Yeah. And I watched a short video that I'm not educated completely on NFTs, but I watched a short video about legal rights and stuff associated with them. And as far as I learned, the court system cannot defend, unless you have written a contract, license transfers and rights transfers with NFTs. If someone buys an NFT from you, even if you wrote up a contract that said you now have all of the rights and you own the copyright and I no longer have rights to reproduce this and sell it or whatever, they have to write that contract up all over again for the next person that buys it. So the person who currently owns this image supposedly probably does not own the rights to the art. They probably only own the NFT, which is a sort of link to or description of, computerized digital description of, like if it's procedural, then whatever code or variables make up what that image becomes is what they own. But I could draw this image with some crayons and animate it and put it on TV if I wanted to, like, assuming that they didn't go through the legal contracts to actually sell rights to artwork, like copyrights and licenses, then they didn't do that.
That's the exact thing, and it happened recently. An NFT of a book was found, so they were like, oh, we're going to make a movie of it. It's like, no, you own the NFT of the book. You do not own the rights to the book. And all of that. And the whole thing is just incredibly dumb. And I mean, what do we expect when we talk about NFTs? They're a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, you know, because they're so just...
They're the creation of a problem, and it's not a solution to the problem that they've created.
Exactly, you know.
Mm-hmm. Just sell the copyright.
I would like to take a moment to shout out the Twitter account at Web3. The number 3 is great, which is like multiple times a day. This Twitter account posts articles and write-ups on everything that's going absolutely horribly wrong with cryptocurrency, NFTs, and everything related to Web3, run by somebody who is a Web3 enthusiast who's been in the industry since its inception. And it is some of the best absolute goddamn schadenfreude on the internet right now. So, you know, if you want that sent to your Twitter feed every day, at Web3 is going just great.
Yeah, it's I thought I was following it already because I've seen so much of it. I must have been
probably me retweeting it.
Yeah, it probably... No, I follow it on my professional account. That explains it. But yeah, it is so funny just looking through going like the biggest problem is the way you address all of the issues is by centralizing it. But that's what, you know, the whole point of all this is, oh, it's decentralized. Yes. That's that's a bad thing.
It kind of makes you wonder. So Seth Green got, quote, scammed, unquote, and the artwork was stolen by way of scam. But is there such a thing as scamming on a decentralized network? Or is there just being stupid and giving someone something? Because if it's decentralized, who's the authority to say that was a illegitimate purchase? Like, you just screwed up. You just sold someone something on accident. Like, I don't get scammed if I accidentally tip my hairdresser $600 instead of $6. I mean, how did he get scammed? There is no authority behind any of the transactions. He just gave somebody something in exchange, and like a personal cash transaction.
The way something gets swiped out of your wallet is because everybody's wallet address is public. anything can be inserted into your wallet, right? Like someone can just like the reason the meme coin, not Dogecoin. What's the other one? The Shiba coin.
On my Doge, man.
When Shiba coin became a thing, the creators of Shiba coin gave, it was like 500 million or something Shiba coin to the founder of Ethereum. They just gave it to him. They put it in his wallet without his knowledge. They just did it. And that transfer made everybody go, oh, Ethereum founder must have just bought a bunch of Shiba coins, so we should all buy this, which inflated it by like 10,000%, and the founders cashed out and made a bunch of money. But with NFTs, anybody can put anything into anybody's NFT wallet. Now, an NFT itself can only hold a very, very, very small amount of memory, but it's enough that you can put a little bit of code or a JPEG or a link or something in there. But there's enough space in there that you can put something to fish with it. So you can just go, that person has a very valuable wallet. Here, I put this NFT in there that looks very similar to your other NFTs. And then they go, what's this? And they tap it, and just by interacting with it, it eats their wallet and transfers it to somebody else.
Oh, so it's not just a scam. They actually use basically a virus.
Literally.
To steal. Okay, all right. I thought they were just like running a site where they were just like, weird scammers send us gift cards or whatever, or give us your account information, and he just screwed up.
It's much more insidious than that. Well, technically, he did just screw up because somebody must have sent him something that transferred it out of his wallet. But it's like a number of weeks ago, the All My Apes Are Gone thing that happened, and then the Bored Ape Yacht Club somehow returned his apes to him, because that's what a lot of these are, is they're phishing scams. So something will show up in your wallet, and you'll be like, what's that? Touch it, and all your stuff's gone.
People want to introduce computer viruses to their wallet.
Yeah.
This is the future of financial interactions. They're like, hey, imagine if you had a wallet full of cash, but Russian hackers, Russian hackers could just steal it. Sorry, Russia and whatever.
Someone could just steal it.
Hackers could just steal it with a computer virus. They could a chain email could steal your wallet.
It'd be like opening up an email that empties your bank account.
That's hilariously stupid. These are the clowns, and one of them fell over, and now it's just more funny.
Just imagine in the future someone helping their grandma because their grandma opened a suspicious NFT and lost all her bored apes. I'm sorry. I know that was our inheritance that you've just lost.
Right? Just put your money under the mattress. Your mattress can't be targeted by chain emails.
Depends on if it's a smart mattress or not. On a bit more of a serious tone, but also good news, Raven Software over the past several months, feels like I'm close to a year now, basically for the majority of this year so far, for the past 5 months, Raven Software's QA team specifically, if you're unfamiliar, that's one of the teams that works on Call of Duty, has been in the process of forming a union. Just last week, a 30-person group mailed in ballots to the National Labor Relations Board at the beginning of April, leading to an official count on Monday. 19 workers voted yes, with 3 votes against, and so they have formed the first games development union in North America. Well, in the States.
So it's actually a first. I was wondering how first this was.
This is the first workers union for the games industry in America. It's called the Game Workers Alliance, and they will move to contract negotiations with Activision Blizzard. I'm getting this article off of Polygon. I will link to the full article if you would like. Then it was like Tuesday, a few days later, Phill Spencer came out and stated that because the Microsoft is currently looming over Activision Blizzard as part of the buyout that is in process, and Phill Spencer came out and says today to say that they will be supporting the Game Workers Alliance, and they will absolutely support the employees and their efforts to unionize. So, which is kind of impressive, but makes sense considering he's buying it, or Microsoft's buying it.
Look, Phill Spencer has been someone that I've been continually proud of. Proud's probably not the word. Impressed with You know, he is someone that, as he continues to push Microsoft and all of that, he's put his money where his mouth is. You know, they've not just talked about, oh, we want to see more of this, we want to see more of that. They've been doing a lot of work for that. You know, in driving that, and I've been continually impressed with a lot of Xbox's stuff around, you know, diversity, gender inclusion, and all of that. And, you know, I don't know if I spoke about it on the podcast before, but basically, you know, we are going into June, which is Pride History Month or Pride Month. One Pride Month, they made the Xbox rainbow. They had so many people getting really upset that at the end of the month, when it went into July, they put up, psych, it's Pride Month 2. And they used a different rainbow logo. And then they got to, the third month, they put up Pride Month 3, and they were using the Halo numbers. And then they were like, it's Pride Month Infinite now. And, you know, I thought that was really great. It's basically anyone who complained just went longer. And, you know, this, along with this and the buyout and how outspoken Phill Spencer has been in support of positive business practices. And yeah, I'm very hopeful that, you know, I get the impression that money is put, or, you know, the money is being put where the mouth is. In other words, you know, he is supporting this, not just because Microsoft has to, but because, you know, he believes in this. And I do hope it continues, because it means positive things for the game industry, you know, especially like as someone who's worked in the game industry, the general thing of is, yeah, you could get paid a lot better outside the game industry, but we all do it here because we love it. And so often that is just taken advantage of. And
that doesn't fly when you're the most profitable media format in existence, right?
Yeah, and
I used to think that food service was the biggest disparity between the people who owned the industry and people who worked the industry. But honestly, the games industry is right up there in terms of disparity of wealth. And it really shows. I read this article, and what stood out to me the most was how it said that their pay will be increased to $20 an hour, and they'll be given access to bonuses and benefits. If you're working for less than $20 an hour without bonuses or benefits in the year 2022, you don't have an adult job. You're not supported well financially. You have to make more than $20 an hour, and you have to have benefits, or else you're basically in poverty in 2022. So an increase to that is, what were they making before? What were you paying these
minimum
people
wage.
That their argument is 20?
They were making they were making minimum wage in QA at Raven.
Yeah, and now they also said something about maybe, I don't know, maybe a tactic to fight this by putting QA testers into embedded positions.
Yeah,
does that mean hire them as actual employees?
No, I'm not sure what it was, but the intention there was, instead of a QA department, you would have 2 QA people assigned to the art department, 2 QA people assigned to the environment department. So they weren't able to talk with each other. They wouldn't be able to actually connect and talk. They were split up and sort of, which is like, you know, when you got 2 troublesome people at school, when you're sitting with your friend and your teacher make you sit in different spots. It was just that. You know, it was nothing but a blind attempt to, if we split them up, they can't talk as much and can't organize as much. And yeah, like, I am absolutely horrified by it all. And it's really good to see this come. Because I think a lot of people kind of overlook how shitty the entire situation was. You know, they were just like laid off. And then it came out that they were earning minimum wage, and, you know, they'd done all this work and they'd made these big changes in order to continue. And then Activision Blizzard was just like, nah, you're gone. And so it's really good to see this come. I am super hopeful that it means a big change within the industry as well, because what else was I thinking of? The way several studios, basically just dissolve overnight, and it turns out they were all paid absolutely nothing, and there was no support, no protection for any of the workers there.
It is truly horrifying when you dig into those things.
Yeah.
And what surprised me the most about that pay too is I don't. This is an industry I don't know too much about, but I expect that it's easier to be an employee, any kind of employee for a games company, if you live at least nearby the headquarters. Even if you can do most of the work from home, if your studio is in LA, you're probably hiring people from the LA area to do your Q&A. And to think that people in these areas where entertainment is being produced, which is high value, high housing costs and stuff like that, to think that they were getting paid minimum wage, you might as well beg with a cardboard sign for your money at that point. If you're living in LA, $18 an hour, even $20.
The freakish thing about Raven Software is they're in Madison, Wisconsin. They're in the middle of nowhere. But what's terrifying is the way these workers were, or the way this QA department was treated before these union efforts were started, was once a year they would get cut back. Because they work on, they're a support studio for Call of Duty, right? So currently they're mostly working on Warzone, the ongoing live game. And right at the beginning of the year, their QA team got cut back heavily. And because people moved to Madison, Wisconsin to work at Raven, and because they are the main game dev house in the city, when you get laid off, there's no work there if you already live there, which is what started these unionization efforts at the beginning, because they went through a round of layoffs. Half the QA team lost their jobs on a live game that's not going anywhere, that needs a lot of QA and is notorious for being buggy and broken because their QA is underpaid and overworked, and they have a very strict release schedule. So at the very least in LA, if you get laid off, there's more work around. If you're working game dev in Vancouver, Canada, there's like 4 other studios you could go work for. If you're in Madison, Wisconsin, good luck. You're unemployed and now you can't afford your rent.
Oh.
Even though it's Wisconsin, it's still it's Madison, Wisconsin. You're not in the total boonies. It's not right now, in the current state of things, housing prices in any urban area are pretty out of control.
We're not from America. Wisconsin sounds like the boonies to all of us.
It is the boonies, but every state has, I'm from Illinois. Most of Illinois is a cornfield. And by most of Illinois is a cornfield, I mean, I'm pretty sure literally the majority of the landmass of Illinois is covered in corn. But if you live in anywhere nearby an urban center, like nearby Chicagoland, it's out of control. The prices of things are out of control. You're paying $5,000 a year in just taxes for your paid off home. It's insane. So, even though it's Wisconsin, if it's Milwaukee or Madison, Wisconsin, I imagine it doesn't matter that it's Wisconsin. You're probably still paying nearly $1,000 a month for rent.
And there isn't
for an apartment
much in the work of game dev out there. It's sort of like London, Ontario, Canada. If you live out there and you work in game dev, you work for one studio, and that's the people who make Warframe. That's that studio. That's the game dev house that's out there. If you work there and then for some reason you can't work there anymore, then you're out of a job and you have to move cities.
Which is the nice thing about New Zealand, because there's actually a surprising amount of game dev studios, really super indie ones in Wellington. And then
everything's really close together because the country is so small you can drive across it in a reasonable amount of time.
It's an 8-hour drive from the tip of the North Island to the South Island, to the bottom.
That's a reasonable amount of time.
To the bottom of the North Island.
It's a reasonable amount of time for
That's one state.
Me to get from here. It takes me 4 hours in a car driving fast to get to Hope. That takes you to the mountain range that is halfway across my province. And I'm already a quarter of the way across.
That's one funny thing, because Kiri, in her last stream before her holiday, was talking about how she was taking a plane because it was going to be an 8-hour drive. And then all these people are like, oh, an 8-hour drive, I do that, rah, rah, rah. She's like, you don't understand. For you, an 8-hour drive is like across the state border. An 8-hour drive in Europe can be multiple countries, you know? And I'm like, I wouldn't even get out of New South Wales back in Australia in an 8-hour drive.
Me and my friend in 2019 went to a metal festival in Edmonton, and we took a plane so that we didn't need to get on a bus for 19 hours. Because neither of us drive. Driving it normally would be about a 12-hour drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be doing a trip to a friend's place who's not even halfway across the country. And I'm not even the West Coast, so halfway to the East Coast from already, like, in the country. It's going to be probably a 12-hour drive just to get to his place. He's in Texas. I'm in Colorado. So, like, that's not even, you're not even getting close to the East Coast.
Geography is
you're not
too
even
big.
halfway there.
That's what I'm saying. The world's too big. We need to shrink it.
I think that's my podcast title. Geography is too big. It was between that and Thomas the Tank Engine lore deep dive.
Oh, yeah. Post-apocalyptic tank engine.
I'm a little bit concerned about how often the random dumb things I say wind up being the podcast title.
I mean, are you complaining?
It's pretty par for the course with me.
Well, on the topic of long drives, this has been a long podcast, so I think we should wind down. Thank you very much, Tekkud, for being our first full episode guest. And so now I'm going to give you the floor and say, tell the lovely listeners of this podcast where they can find your work and who the heck you are and where they can stalk you and watch your stuff.
Well, I am Tekkud, and you can find my videos of obsessively precise Dwarf Fortress management advice. Not advice, instructions, bad advice, good instructions on YouTube. Just the channel's called Tekkud, Tekkud. Also, I stream 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Twitch. Same channel name, Tekkud. And you might not see too much new stuff on my YouTube channel until Premium comes out, but I'll be there. I'm always there thinking about something to do next, and you'll still be able to find me on Twitch 3 days a week doing something crazy, something unwise on Dwarf Fortress.
And Arch, you know the drill.
Yeah, I do know the drill. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Archplaysstuff. I won't spell that out because it's pretty much a whole bunch of regular words we all know, I hope. Yeah, I'm playing a lot of chill games, a lot of ambient sort of style games. Also on Twitter at Archplaysstuff, and I don't use YouTube at the moment, though keep an eye out.
And you can find me at twitch.tv/BLINDIRL, youtube.com, same name, Twitter, same name. I do actually tweet now, so you can follow me on Twitter, and you'll actually get stuff tweeted. If you want to get more episodes of this podcast, you can find that at halcyonfrequency.com, where the full archive is housed. It's also available on most podcast platforms that you listen to. If it's not available on one you happen to enjoy, please send me a DM and I will make it appear there. If you would like to get updates on stuff that we do directly, go to the website and you can find links to the team's Twitter and as well as the team's Discord. On the team's Discord, you can get notifications when this stuff goes live. This podcast also appears on YouTube on the Halcyon Frequency YouTube channel, although we don't advertise it that much. So listen to the audio versions, but the YouTube version's there as well if you'd like it. And I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah, thank you very much for listening to this episode. There probably won't be an episode next week because I don't think anybody's available to record. It's my birthday, so I will be gone and won't be able to record. And it's like one of our team members' spouse's birthdays, and somebody else is on vacation. Bellinair's in a different country, and Sui's finishing school. So I don't know. There might not be an episode next week. If there isn't an episode next week, I'll make sure there's something in the feed just letting you know that we weren't able to record. Just a 2-minute thing.
2 hours of Arch talking to himself. It sounds absolutely perfect.
Arch Talks About Stuff would be the name of that episode. Yeah, so if there isn't an episode next week, there will definitely be something the week after because it is Halcyon Frequency's birthday, so we need to figure out some sort of big shebang with all of us or as many of us as we can cram into the room at the same time. So there will be something the week after at the very least, and then podcast will continue as per normal. But thank you very much for listening to this week's podcast, and you'll hear us again when you hear us. So now is when we say goodbye awkwardly, roughly at the same time. So bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Can I do that bye again?
Sure.
No.
Okay. I'm not editing that out.